It's Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. I want to see some handcuffs, nuclear saber rattling. What could go wrong? In an inconvenient truth presented on the Joe Rogan Experience next on the AM Update.
Being 85 ayes in 6 days, the motion prevails. The Sergeant-at-Arms and any officers appointed by her are directed to send for all absentees whose attendance is not excused for the purposes of securing and maintaining their attendance under warrant of arrest if necessary.
That is Texas Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows announcing the approval of a motion to arrest and issue arrest warrants for Democrats who fled the state to block the GOP's redistricting plan there. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said in a statement yesterday, Texas House Democrats abandoned their duty to Texans by fleeing the state. Texas House Democrats are holding hostage critical legislation to aid flood victims and advance property tax relief. There are consequences for dereliction of duty. Speaker Burrows just issued a call of the Texas House and issued warrants to compel members to return to the chambers. So I want to see some handcuffs when it comes to those Texas Democrats who tried to just completely duck their duties. You know, they don't, give credit to Democrats. They never let anything just go. They always put up some sort of, even if it's annoying as heck, they always put up some sort of fight. Hopefully that's just the beginning of potential arrests. Attorney General Pam Bondi directed her staff on Monday to act on the criminal referral from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard related to the alleged conspiracy to tie President Donald Trump to Russia, and the Department of Justice is now opening a grand jury investigation into the matter. Of course, officially it's alleged, but practically it's real. Bondi personally ordered an unnamed federal prosecutor to initiate legal proceedings, and the prosecutor is expected to present department evidence to a grand jury, which would allow the department to secure potential indictments. That's according to a letter from Bondi reviewed by Fox News. A DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on the report of an investigation, but said Bondi is taking the referral from Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The spokesperson said Bondi believed there is clear cause for deep concern and a need for next steps. Now, it's pretty clear. It was then, but it is crystal clear now why people like James Clapper in the recent weeks have said they're lawyering up when it comes to the Russiagate collusion hoax. Well, we'll go from that to international news. Nuclear saber rattling. The Kremlin tried Monday to diffuse tensions caused by remarks from one of Russia's top officials that led President Trump to shift 2 nuclear submarines closer to Moscow. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters, quote, overall, of course, we do not wish to be drawn into such discussion or comment on it. We approach any statements related to nuclear issues with great caution. As you know, Russia holds a responsible position. President Putin's stance is well known. Russia takes the issue of nuclear non-proliferation very seriously, and of course, we believe that everyone should be extremely careful when it comes to nuclear rhetoric. That's Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. As I said, this all stems from comments last week by Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president Dmitry Medvedev, that would be, in a flurry of posts on X about the U.S. possibly deploying additional sanctions on Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine, insisting that, quote, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war. Medvedev is now a deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia. He previously warned Trump of World War III in May in response to the U.S. president's criticisms of Putin. On Friday, Trump responded by announcing he's moving 2 nuclear submarines to, quote, appropriate regions. Nuclear saber rattling, what could go wrong? Well, from that to much more tame news, here's Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rawlins, and she had a big announcement to make about what you can use SNAP benefits on.
Since my confirmation, our department has encouraged states to think differently and creatively about how to solve the many health issues facing Americans. One way is by not allowing taxpayer-funded benefits to be used to purchase unhealthy items like soda, candy, and other junk food. The number one purchase by SNAP recipients is sugary drinks. SNAP is a supplemental nutrition program meant to provide health food benefits to low-income families.
So that's official now. No more using welfare benefits to buy things that are not healthy or nutritious, according to the USDA. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says it's just common sense.
Spending $405 million a day on SNAP, and about 10% is going to sugary drinks. And between, and if you add candies to that, it's about 13 to 17%. And we all believe in free choice. We live in a democracy. People can make their own choice about what they're going to buy and what they're not going to buy. If you want to buy a sugary soda, you ought to be able to do that. But the U.S. taxpayer should not pay for it. And the U.S. taxpayer should not be paying to feed kids foods, the poorest kids in our country, with foods that are going to give them diabetes. And then my agency ends up through Medicaid and Medicare paying for those injuries.
Yep, that's just common sense. According to HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., no more using welfare to purchase junk food as far as the USDA is concerned. Well, there was a big brouhaha yesterday on a different matter about some language in a Department of Homeland Security memo regarding whether or not you would receive disaster benefits, whether or not states could receive disaster benefits if they decided to, quote unquote, boycott Israel. Well, by the end of the day, that language was removed. The White House playing, for whatever reason, close to the chest. I'm sure the intent here is to avoid any sort of commitments to states that are kowtowing to the boycott, divestment, sanction movement, which is tied to, of course, radical Islam. But they did remove that language, basically saying, hey, if you want to boycott Israel, you're not going to get disaster relief. They removed that, but they are still playing things close to the vest. A lot of people were freaking out about that yesterday. A lot of people across the political spectrum freaking out about that yesterday. President Trump, on a different matter, talked to Breitbart about the phrase or the new word that he coined. It's one of my favorites because it's so dumb, but it's perfect.
I see this phrase out there. I think you developed this word, panicins, right? Like no panicins. Can you define panicins for us? What is a panikin? And why should we not follow that?
Well, in some cases, they're good people that really have the best and they want to do things. But I call them panicins because maybe they're not smart, because they're playing right into the enemy's camp. And in other cases, they really are people that panic. They can't handle pressure. And, both are sort of dangerous.
So there's President Trump on the word that he coined, panicins, saying, hey, they might be nice people, but they just panic under pressure. That's why I love the word so much. It's really dumb, but it's perfect. There are so many people, too many people, who at the first sign of discomfort just absolutely throw in the towel and panic. And I think that word describes them perfectly. Let's check in on the Democrats real quick before our break. This is Democrat Representative Delia Ramirez speaking at a summit in Mexico City, speaking in Spanish. Here's what she had to say. She is saying, I am a proud Guatemalan before I am an American. Democrat Representative Delia Ramirez speaking at a summit in Mexico City. That's not in the United States, by the way. Talking about how she's a proud Guatemalan before she's an American. 3 different countries in play there. One of which she represents, but yet she's speaking in the country she does not represent. Discussing how she's proud of being a Guatemalan before she's proud of being an American, despite the fact that she's representing America or something. Here's Senator Elizabeth Warren speaking with probably the next mayor of New York City, Zoran Mamdani, being asked whether or not his platform should be adopted by the broader Democrat Party.
When someone stands up and says, I will lead this city by making it more affordable, and here are my plans, real plans to deliver on childcare, plans to deliver on housing, plans to deliver, we're going to experiment, we're going to try things on groceries. That is the Democratic message.
We're going to experiment with your groceries. Oh, man. If that just doesn't send a thrill up your spine, a vote of confidence, I'm not sure what will. When we come back, more evidence Brazil is turning into a dictatorship. Somebody needs to do a wellness check on the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and an inconvenient truth dropped on the Joe Rogan Experience. That's coming up next.
You should stand corrected. Good morning. False. Great morning. Let's go.
Why great? What makes this one great?
Because we're another day closer to death.
That is Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel, who apparently needs a wellness check. correcting a reporter who said it was a good morning. He said, no, it's a great morning. He was asked why it's a great morning. He said, because we're one day closer to death. Good Lord. That dude is a really weird hipster, yet he is the head coach for a National Football League franchise. Well, we go south of the equator. Brazil's Supreme Court on Monday ordered the house arrest of former President Jair Bolsonaro on trial for allegedly leading a coup attempt after losing the 2022 election. The court's Justice Alexander de Moraes issued the order. You've seen this guy before. He looks like Voldemort. Saying his decision that Bolsonaro had violated the precautionary measures imposed on him by posting content on his son's social media channels. Prosecutors accused Bolsonaro of heading a criminal organization that plotted to overturn the election, including plans to kill President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and a Supreme Court justice. Monday's order followed one of the top courts last month that ordered Bolsonaro wear an electronic ankle monitor and imposed a curfew on his activities while the proceedings are underway. The latest decision keeps the far-right leader, so-called, under ankle monitoring, allows only family members and lawyers to visit him, and seizes all mobile phones from his home in Rio de Janeiro. So Jair Bolsonaro, he is definitely right-wing, even by the American definition of right-wing. And if you just look at the career trajectory of Bolsonaro and our President Trump, very, very similar. Very much a disruptor to the natural order that the elites in their respective countries had gotten used to. We're on the short end of questionable election results. Trump in 2020, Bolsonaro in 2022. And since exiting office, have been on the brunt of lawfare. On the receiving end of lawfare. The difference is, in Brazil, it looks like they are much more serious about making sure Bolsonaro can never ascend to power. And I think the left was in the United States as well when it came to President Trump. But in the case of Bolsonaro in Brazil, ankle monitors, you're going to be now, you're going to be limited to home confinement. The established political order in Brazil obviously does not want Bolsonaro to come back to power or have any avenue to do so. I teased this a couple of times. This is Chad Wright. Wright is a decorated combat veteran who's also a believer, and he joined the Joe Rogan Experience recently to drop an inconvenient truth about what grace actually means. Here is Chad Wright.
And by the way, man, like, I'm not telling you or anyone listening to this what we call testimony, like what the Lord's given me experientially in life to share with other people. I'm not telling you this to convince you of anything. Like, there's nothing that I can say to convince you in the truth of the gospel. Like, I truly believe that. There's no words that I can use. There's no logic that I can apply. There's nothing that I or anyone else can say to convince you of this. And it goes back to what we started off in the conversation with, of these things must be spiritually discerned. And it is by grace, God's grace, that we are made alive and able to discern the truth of these things. That's a hard thing to accept, man. Like, that man is totally depraved. And I can't say anything to convince anyone of the truth of these scriptures. But the scriptures are dripping, literally dripping with that very fact. That's the interesting thing about the scriptures. They leave nothing for man. Like, it's almost the single thing that separates what's contained in the Holy Scriptures from other religious philosophy. It literally leaves nothing for man.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, there is nothing that you can do to be made righteous in the eyes of the Creator. There is nothing that you can do to save yourself. As a matter of fact, without the grace and the help of the Almighty, you can't even believe the truth. You won't do it. You are spiritually dead prior to regeneration. You see what I'm saying? When you're dead, if we had a dead man laying on the floor right here, and I said, "Dead man, hearken unto my voice. There is a hospital a mile down the road. And if you'll get up and walk to that hospital, or you'll allow me to take you to that hospital, they'll shock you and bring you back to life. Is he going to respond to that message? He's going to lay there dead, right?
Yeah.
We're dead spiritually until we are made alive by the grace of the Almighty. It leaves nothing for man. Not a thread.
That is former Navy SEAL, now entrepreneur and motivational speaker Chad Wright, dropping some difficult truth bombs on the Joe Rogan Experience recently. It's one of many clips I've seen floating around. Be curious to know what you think of that. I especially am intrigued, and I do tend to agree with the overall point that you heard in just that brief clip, which is, yes, the Bible is dripping with evidence. Yes, history is dripping with evidence. Yes, all that is true. Yes, the Bible is philosophically, logically consistent throughout. The mere fact that we even have something called a Bible is evidence. It testifies to the truth of what's actually in the Bible. But at the end of the day, faith is faith. You're going to place your faith in something at the end of the day. And I think that's what he's talking about. Why? By the grace of, it is only by the grace of God that we actually come before the throne. That is only by the grace of God. We have hard hearts. The Bible is replete with saying hard hearts, and it's only by His grace. There can be any amount of evidence, but only the Holy Spirit can replace that heart of stone with a heart of flesh. It was incredible to hear that again on the Joe Rogan Experience. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. There was a time in my life, kind of made an allusion to this yesterday during air analysis, after the Jared Allen Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame induction speech. There was a time in my life not too long ago that this time of the year, August, late July to late August, was my favorite time of the year. Like, seriously, my favorite time of the year. The anticipation for football season, I liked just as much, if not more than, football season. But I've been sensing something growing over the past few years, or something waning, maybe a more accurate way of saying that, and it's that very sense of anticipation. Now, if you're, I don't want to make vast stereotypes, but it's more likely than not, if you're a male in this audience, you probably have more in common with what I'm talking about than if you're of the Famali persuasion. And I can't quite put my finger on why my interest both in the National Football League and college football is waning. The era of woke is almost over. Colin Kaepernick seems like a fever dream when it comes to the NFL. By the end of last season, the NFL announced no more slogans, BLM slogans, painted in the end zone. Especially at the collegiate level, in college football, it's very much right-wing coded. Yet my interest in football this year, it's not like I don't have any interest, but the natural interest that I once had just is not there. And like I said, I can't put my finger on it. There could be a number of things. Number one, just I'm not depressed. I'm busy, but I'm not depressed. It's not that. Number two, I think with college football, it's just really hard to invest any study or time into college football right now. Because the players, by and large, just do not stay in the same schools that they were at. They're moving up, they're moving down, they're moving away. It's hard to invest in any of those personalities, figures, stories when it comes to college football, just because the way the sport has changed, especially in the last 5 years. So that's a possibility. The other possibility is, for the second straight year, it seems like both NFL and college are starting earlier than they normally do. That was definitely true. I can't remember a Hall of Fame game in July. Well, July 31st, there was the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. I don't know if it's the calendar anomaly or there's been some policy changed in college football, but it used to be the earliest games you would get, the week 0 games, were the last week of August, the last weekend of August. Now it's the second to last weekend of August for the second straight year. Maybe my anticipation is waning because our summers are way too short, cut short by football season. The other possibility in both cases is I'm just getting older and these things mean less and less to me. So I want to know, this is going to be the genesis of the poll of the week posted later on today over at Real AM Update on X. If you cared about football at all or still currently care about football, is your interest in this particular season waning? Do you sense that? I mean, another example. I have all three in my possession. I have all three of the college football preview magazines, the main ones anyway. That's Phil Steele, Lindy's, and Athlon. I purchased two. The third one, Phil Steele, was given to me. I've barely read any of the Lindy's, and I've not read any of the Athlon. I don't have the motivation. I can't put my finger on why that is this year. I'd be curious to know if you're kind of feeling the same way as well. Let me know at Real AM Update, poll of the week on X. That's going to do it for a Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.